Hello and welcome to our lecture called The Theories of Mass Communication with Journalism 101 Intro to Mass Comm. My name is Professor Kelsey Stewart and we're at Moore Park College. So mass communication theories explore explanations for how we interact with mass communication, its role in our lives, and the effects it has on us. There's 5 main type of theories. We have the hypodermic needle theory. It's also called the magic bullet theory. We have the two-step flow theory, the multi-step flow theory, uses and gratifications, and the cultivation theory. So the hypodermic needle theory, or the magic bullet theory, suggests that mass comm is like a gun firing bullets of information at a passive audience. This theory suggests that anything that we see, we immediately receive and react a certain way to it. And this theory also suggests that we all react the same way. This has been discredited because academics argue that not all members of an audience interpret a message the same way. If you'd like to read a little bit more about this, please read chapter 20 in the Media Studies 101 textbook that I've hyperlinked right here. Another example of this theory in action would be what mainstream media offers us. So think of the constant images that are attached with messages, and more often than not, take on the reaction that is expected of us. So if we see a certain image, check out this image of President Trump, we're going to immediately see the message that it's offered with. So we see these messages, we see these images, we see this image of Biden, and he's in a professional setting, he's smiling, he's not looking at all like President Trump. So it gives a certain reaction, the image, especially what media selects. So they could have chosen a different frame of President Trump and shown him in a different light. They could have shown a different frame of Biden and showed him in a different light. Oftentimes these are different networks that will offer a certain perspective, a certain frame, we could say, in regards to political leanings. But either way, mainstream media will offer us an image, they'll attach a message, and often that reaction will be set. We have also the two-step flow theory. So this theory suggests that mass communication messages do not move directly from the sender-receiver. So instead, there's a middleman. There's a small group called gatekeepers or screen media managers, messages that control the transmission to the masses. So follow up on this with Chapter 9 in the Media Studies 101. Gatekeepers are people or policies that act as a go-between. So they control access from one point to another. They may refuse, control, or delay access to services. So they may also be used to oversee how work is being done and whether it meets certain standards. Think about this. Billions of events occur in the world each day, but only a few of them become news. The process, the shifting of that is referred to as gatekeeping. So gatekeeping is also seen as a theory, and it's kind of the pinpoint between two inarguable facts. Events occur everywhere all the time, and the news media cannot cover them all. So what do they choose to cover? When an event occurs, someone has to decide whether and how to pass the information to another person, such as a friend, an official, or journalist. Many of the decisions made between what happens and the transmission to news are referred to as gates and decision markers as gatekeepers. The decision-making process is the core of gatekeeping. It is possible for anyone to be a gatekeeper, anyone who has information about the event and decides to pass it to another person. The process of this information and conveying it to someone else, gatekeepers consciously or unconsciously can change the information. Think of the game telephone. When we're whispering information to one person or another, oftentimes the message gets skewed. So some could be withheld. Some of the information could be withheld. The rest is not unchanged. It just kind of depends on the transmission. It depends on the message. It depends who's receiving it and if they're choosing to receive the full message. This goes a lot with media literacy, which we will talk about, but it's how we interpret the message, where we receive it from, and if we are a member that's closer to where the original source came from, or if we're farther back and it's already begun its diluted process. So gatekeeping is something that occurred heavily in the early 2000s and back. Now that we have access to more digital platforms and more people can receive news, create news, publish their own news, gatekeeping is starting to kind of dwindle a little bit. Everyone's starting to be their own gatekeeper. So that brings us to the multi-step flow theory. This theory suggests that there's a reciprocal nature of sharing information and influencing beliefs and behavior. So the relationship between the media is actually now much more complex. Opinion leaders, which can also be gatekeepers, might create media messages, but opinion followers might be able to sway opinion leaders. So there's a lot more function. There's more functions rather than someone says something and we believe it. Someone publishes something and we read it wholeheartedly. This is the multi-step flow theory involves a lot more opinions, a lot more reactions, a lot more leadership roles in a sense. So this destabilizes the notion of an all-powerful media, but recognizes its influence to a certain degree. So the media influences us, but we have much more thought processes involved. We're not just getting fed information. We're becoming smarter. The other theory, this is the uses and gratification theory. It suggests that audience members actively pursue a particular media to satisfy their needs. So uses and gratification theory, read chapter 5 in Media, Society, and Culture, but it would bank on the fact that we are pursuing, like, we're going to read Fox News because we want a certain opinion. We're going to read CNN because we want a certain opinion. We value Anderson Cooper. We value Hannity, whichever political realm. We're going to read citizens journalism because we want that independent viewpoint. So this theory suggests that audience members are not only pursuing a certain media to satisfy their needs, but they're actively engaged in certain types of media, and they know what they are seeking. So you can also read Media Studies 101, Chapter 23. So our last theory, this is the cultivation theory. So this questions how active we actually are when we consume mass communication. So going back to uses and gratification, we can assume we were brought up Republican or we were brought up Democrat, so we're going to read a certain type of news or watch a certain type of news. And are we reading and watching that type of news because we have followed up on everything that they stand for as a news outlet, or are we just doing what we're told type of thing? Cultivation theory argues that just debates how active we actually are involved in the as we consume mass communication. Think of the TikTok videos if you're just streaming your Instagram or social media, when you're just watching the feed and you're not really like actively involved in what we're consuming. So we don't really have a say with what we're seeing. We're just consuming it. So the average American views between 3 to 5 hours of television a day, 21 hours per week. And that was early 2000s. So think of now how much screen time you're actually getting. And screen time, I mean, not just playing a video game or watching a movie. We're now talking about your engagement with social media platforms. Roughly 5 hours to 8 hours a day would probably be the average screen time that you're getting. So what kind of impact does this all have? Is it possible to tell when the average viewer has become desensitized to violent content, or does it serve as an outlet for normal aggression? Why doesn't all violent content affect every viewer in the same manner? Does too much consumption of violent media really cause violent behavior in viewers? So these questions were asked as mass shootings started happening in the last 8 years. Think of how many mass shootings have happened and its prevalency. Do we blame it on something? Is it just a product of desensitization? Is it a product of exposure? Where are we drawing the line? So this theory, the cultivation theory, has been extended to address a more general influence of media on human social life as well and personal beliefs. So media present cultures such as fear of victimization, body image, promiscuity, religion, families, attitudes towards racism, sex roles, and drug use. So advertising doesn't cause eating problems, but any more than it causes alcoholism. However, advertising does promote certain things. So if you're constantly seeing certain ads, are you taking in that ads as what your body image should resemble, how you should act, how you should behave? So the cultivation theory just questions on how active we are when we consume it. So we're consuming these images, we're consuming these ads, we're consuming these feeds, we're watching these news stations. Are we just consuming it and taking it in as truth and adjusting our lifestyles because of it? Or are we arguing? Is there some sort of critical thinking going on? What's that middle step going on? Is there one? So, mass communication theories are outlined into three categories: theories about culture and society, theories of influence and persuasion, and media use theories. You have to understand these theories in order to create or look at some skills that will help you become a better and more critical consumer of mass communication. All right, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next lecture.